Hi Enrico, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm sorry for my English, it's a little bit rusty. I'll try to do my best. This year has been a year full of chaos and big headlines like the death of digital analytics, the death of the web, and I think next year will feel similar. Platforms will change, but the basics will keep being what they matter most. What is really changing is how we access data. Conversation analytics will be part of almost every product. It will soon be better integrated and with fewer hallucinations. This lowers the barrier and helps more teams use data in daily decisions. The European Union may also help you move past cookie banners in 2026, hopefully with a better, less annoying privacy model. I think 2026 will start to bring real wins in product integration and data activation, fewer silos, easier connection, and faster actions. Vibe coding will also help teams and companies improve internal processes that used to be slow and expensive. What worries me is work slow. AI as the default answer to everything. We will need time to filter and think what truly adds value. No matter the year, use AI to amplify what you do. And remember that the work is still about people. And now, Merry Christmas, Feliz Navidad, Bon Natale e Bon Nadal.
And what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, hottest thing to happen in analytics in 2025? Well, obviously, it was AI animations. This time last year, I had never heard of N8N or Make.com. Now I pay for all of them. I think the thing that is happening is we're all trying to figure out how can we take little bits of intelligence and plug it in the right way. And so there's a ton of trial and error that I've been going through this year. I suspect many of you have as well. I think we'll probably get to a point someday where we're able to produce a lot more as a result of it. I don't think that happened in 2025. 2025 wasn't about efficiency. It was really about trial and error, figuring out like what are some good use cases for intelligence? How can I build something that is consistent and trustworthy? So what do I fear most about 2026? I'm afraid that some people are going to be left behind. And I think that could be number one, because they're not reskilling themselves, or number two, because they work for companies that are blocking them. If you want to do really well in analytics in 2027 and beyond, you need to get pretty comfortable knowing how and when to in intelligence with your work within your workflows. The best way to do that is to tinker with automations. But a large company is going to say, oh, how am I supposed to use single sign-in to get around my VPN to access the systems that my AI automation requires to accomplish some task? Or like, oh, we've got to go through a vendor selection process. So you can't just put your credit card in to Make.com or N8N or Google Workspace. We have to have somebody form a committee to figure out which tool we're going to use. Who has the permissions to create the API token in Meta Ads so that you can access it, right? We have gatekeepers everywhere locking this stuff down. Those people who are in those environments, it's no fault of their own, but they're going to be left behind. Ultimately, I want to see a world at the end of 2026 where we're all thriving and we feel like we're producing more. But I think reality is the people who are going to get there are going to be those who are very strategic about positioning themselves in a place where they could take advantage of this time that we're living in.
Hey, Glenn from Human37. Enrico asked me to share with you my worst nightmares for the new year in his Nightmare Before Christmas episode, including or as well the things I've seen that have changed this year and the things that did not change this year. Let's start with the things that changed this year. I do believe that the different pockets of analytics are coming together finally. We have people and tools branding what they did as product analytics, marketing analytics, and experience analytics. I think for the very first time we see tools that can handle those three things or those three concepts or three disciplines, which means that for the very first time we're getting different teams within the company, designers, UXers, marketeers, and product people, to be able to do analysis on the same data set, but through their own lens, through their own visuals, through their own things that they need, but within one suite, within one tool, which is excellent because it means that we can finally figure out how does a user get to our product, website, whatever it is, how do they behave there, and how can we improve it, right? How can we facilitate the experience and the journey of the user across our products? Finally, for once, in one tool. Second thing I think that changed, it's not a change, I think it's a continuation, is that the data warehouse is taking front and center. We saw this last year already, specifically in the market of composable CDPs, but it's coming to analytics, right? Reverse ETL used to be a product category. Now it's just a feature that's baked in any CDP or any analytics platforms, which means that we can use more complete data for our analysis purposes and not only web or app behavioral data. Things that did not change. I still get weekly requests for reports that are super urgent. And when I ask afterwards what was done with the report, I typically get silence, right? I think we're still doing data for the sake of data. And the fact that reporting is there for the sake of reporting. I think that the majority of reporting is simply being made for meeting purposes and not necessarily for decision purposes. I think that has not changed, and I wish that it would change. What's my first or my worst nightmare? I'll repeat. What's my worst nightmare for next year? I think a lot of people are scared of AI. I'm not necessarily scared of AI. What worries me about AI, which is not the same, right, is that we're simply going to do, we're going to produce more data, we're going to produce more analysis, we're going to produce more reports, but we're going to do less with it, right? That's my main fear in general in the data practice. People are reporting for the sake of reporting, and they're not necessarily doing it in order to make decisions to optimize or to activate certain data points. I think AI is simply going to amplify that because, let's be honest, marketeers, humans in general, in a lot of companies don't necessarily know what to do with a report. And I'm not sure if AI is actually going to help with that or if it's just going to amplify the number of reports and analysis we're going to ask for. The second thing that kind of scares me in that context is because if we're going to hand over all of the analysis to LLMs, AIs, all of these type of things, is we're also going to lose touch with how did the data get there? What's the input that we required? How did we clean it up? What's the context of each data point? And possibly we're just going to look at some sort of a report and we're going to be disconnected with the context in which that happened. And we might be able to draw conclusions that are completely false or incomplete because the lack of the context and the distance between the data that was gathered, how it was gathered, and the conclusion that was drawn by a LLM or AI that sits within an application and also doesn't necessarily have that context. So voila, here it is. I hope I am completely wrong with all of my predictions for next year, and I wish you a happy 2026.
Hi, this is Josh Silverbauer, and I am going to talk about what has changed over the last year with analytics. What we are seeing change with analytics over the last year is a lot more AI being layered onto analytics tools. We saw MCPs become pretty prevalent, where there's multiple different analytics tools that are all put together with an LLM that you can chat with. And we are seeing chatbots with your data pop up all over the place as well. What I fear this next year could bring, the nightmare, is I fear that people will start relying completely on LLMs to give them insights, and that data is not necessarily, it's a black box. You're not actually seeing what's there. You are not, in control of that data anymore. And while AI can be helpful layering on that insight, it shouldn't be the only tool that you use to be able to drive your business car. So I'm hoping that there's still a human element, that is layered onto this. Don't ignore the tools, but don't just trust them blindly either. Okay, and that's what's scary.
It was a nightmare before Christmas. In my case, it does not apply to a single night or a single event. It happens every time when I open somebody's GA4 account trying to help them sort a problem, and then I go to the exploration section, and when I set the date range and trying to find out something that happened prior to the last 2-month period, I realize that
the dates are grayed out. Why? Well, because that means that they haven't reset the data retention period in the admin section from the default 2 months to the maximum possible 14 months. Now, I know that this is doable to some extent in the standard reports, but it's super tedious and it kinda goes on my nerves. So this is the horror story that I live through every time when I see somebody's data retention has not been reset.
Changed or hasn't changed in 2025 in analytics. So I think what hasn't changed is that still business people are not getting what data is. So we have a huge amount of data illiteracy. Also, what hasn't changed is the fact that many data analysts are not data analysts. They are just producing reports that business people are getting and they don't do anything with those. So there is a difference between mining data and making sense of data. What I think has changed is that we do have tools that are sort of helping us to get what's there. So detect anomalies, making sense of data, or ingesting more sources of data so that you can generate, let's say, multifaceted insights. So that has changed. What I fear the most in the future, what I fear the most in 2026, when it comes to analytics, what I fear the most is that the huge amount of expectations is going to still happen. So business people are still gonna think that there's a magic flip and they can get all the data that they need. What I also fear is that data analyst people are still gonna, let's say, be stuck into the old patterns and models about how to interpret and make sense of data. So that's it. Happy 2026.